Writer Joan Didion, whose electric anxiety inspired a generation, has died at 87. American novelist, journalist and essayist Joan Didion died on Thursday at her home in New York at age 87 from Parkinson's disease, according to Knopf publicist Paul Bogaards. The best-selling writer began describing her home state, California, for magazines in the 1960s and broadened her subjects over the decades in nonfiction, fiction and films. Didion spoke about the act of writing more astutely than pretty much anybody else. "I write entirely to find out what is on my mind, what I'm thinking," she said. The writing itself was a path to understanding and clarification. Her definition of a writer was, a person whose most absorbed and passionate hours are spent arranging words on pieces of paper. She said that in a 1976 speech at her alma mater, the University of California, Berkeley. By then, Didion had published Slouching Towards Bethlehem, a collection of reportage about life in the chaos of 1960s America. She'd also published 2 novels, Play It As It Lays, which could have been subtitled, Lost in Las Vegas and Most Other Places, and Run River, her first novel. Here's an excerpt from the latter. There was a sense that to close one's eyes on a valley town was to risk opening them a moment later on dry fields, the sun bleaching out the last traces of habitation, a flowered straw hat, a neon advertisement which had blinked a moment before from a wall no longer visible. More yield from every acre with seeds from Northrop King. It was a great comfort, watching the towns come and go through the tinted window of the Greyhound bus. The heat drained the distinctions from things, marriage and divorce and new curtains and overdrafts at the bank. All the same, and Lily could not at the moment imagine any preoccupation strong enough to withstand the summer. That excerpt, from 1963, is the essence of Didion's writing style: terse, polished, elegant and piercing. Reviewer John Leonard said her sentences were like ice-pick laser beams. Novelist and nonfiction writer Francine Prose says it's a style, and a voice, that Didion pioneered in the 60s. It's hard to remember how important it was to see evidence of real female intelligence on the page, Prose says. She put a certain kind of voice, Western, female, anxious, on the page that hadn't been there before. Writing with electric anxiety, Prose has a list of all the places and subjects Didion dealt with in her writing lifetime. It includes California, New York, Hawaii, El Salvador, Las Vegas, Miami, John Wayne, Patty Hearst, Vietnam, the Central Park Jogger, the Black Panthers, presidential elections, Newt Gingrich, Doris Lessing, feminism, hippies, films, books and journalism. But there's also death. She wrote about her husband's 2003 death in the year of magical thinking, and when their daughter, Quintana, died 2 years later, Didion struggled with that subject in Blue Nights. Behind all those topics and places was the writer's steady, astute, mournful, anxious voice. It's just thrumming with anxiety, Prose says. Every sentence has a kind of electric anxiety, and it's partly what makes you pay such close attention. I mean, you're just waiting for something to explode, and then it doesn't and you keep reading. Meanwhile, Didion kept writing with her nervous pen. It was itself an act of bravery. Everything makes her anxious, Prose says. And yet she goes to El Salvador. She goes to Miami. She goes to Las Vegas. She travels all around California. She visits the Panthers. She visits the hippies. It's anxiety and it's at the same time transcending the anxiety, which pretty much describes what it takes for any of us to get through the day. Didion recognized that the physical and psychological landscapes she described were desolate. I am more attracted to the underside of the tapestry, she said. I tend to always look for the wrong side, the bleak side. I mean, I have since I was a child. She once said, we tell ourselves stories in order to live, and the ones she told were dark truths. I'm rather a slow study, and I came late to the apprehension that there was a void at the center of experience.